Furiosa had a pretty abysmal opening when it came out over Memorial Day weekend, despite the fact that it was the number one movie at the box office domestically over that weekend. It was the lowest grossing opening movie on Memorial Day weekend for around 30 years domestically, so not very good, all things considered. And it's not like this movie was pretty terrible because audience and critic scores for this movie were actually fairly decent. It's just people weren't interested in watching a Mad Max movie without Mad Max in it. In fact, the movie did so poorly that director George Miller said that it pretty much derailed any plans that he had for future Mad Max movies. But there's probably a number of reasons why this movie ultimately did fail at the box office. But it looks like the hits haven't stopped coming for this because there's more bad news for Furiosa because it looks like it's not going to be in theaters much longer because a lot of theaters around the country are pretty much dropping them because nope, audiences just aren't interested in watching it. It hasn't even played in theaters 3 full weeks yet, but Warner Brothers' Furiosa and Mad Max Saga already appeared to be nearing the end of its disappointing run. The movie dropped out of the top 5 at the domestic box office this weekend, where it was overtaken not only by the family-friendly If, but also the holdover hit Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. When jumping over to the numbers, you can see that this made $145 million globally, which is not good because the budget for this movie was just under $170 million, which means this movie probably needed to make a minimum of $400 million, probably closer to $450 million mark in order for it to be profitable. And with the way things are going, it's looking like it's probably not going to actually achieve that. You can even go further breakdown and you can see domestically at the box office in its second weekend outing on Friday, it dropped around 70%. So people aren't watching it. And this week it was even pretty bad too, because negative 60% dropped from Friday to Friday, which obviously it's not as significant, but still it's pretty bad. But look at right here, the numbers for the theaters, because right now it's playing at around just under 3,000 theaters when it was previously a little over 3,800 theaters, which means over 800, nearly 900 theaters have dropped this movie, which is pretty bad because even though 2,900 theaters is still a pretty good amount, it's not a good sign when it's only been out for a few weeks and already nearly 1,000 theaters have decided to drop it from showing because it's just an indicator that people aren't interested in watching this movie if they're just trying to make room for whatever else is coming out. And it's not like there's a whole lot of stuff out in the box office right now, so I don't know why theaters are trying to drop it in order to make room for something else, but apparently whatever else is out there is better than what Furiosa has to offer. Going back into the article, Furiosa is one of the biggest underperformers of the year. Reviews for Furiosa have been positive as well. The movie appears to have settled at a 90% approval rating on the aggregator site Rotten Tomatoes, with critics noting its more epic narrative and lofty philosophical ideas as compared to the first film, which was hailed for its achievement in action cinematography. But audiences simply weren't interested in watching a prequel about the warrior Furiosa, who was played so memorably by Charlize Theron in Fury Road. In the lead up to the release of this movie, a lot of people were speculating that it was just going to be the feminized version of Mad Max. It's just following the character of Furiosa. And I can understand why a lot of people thought that way, which is probably why the movie did so poorly during its opening weekend. But word of mouth came around and it turned out that's not really the case for this movie. So if that was the sole factor of why a lot of people didn't watch this movie, then you would think that there would have been more of an uptick in people watching it during the second weekend. Or at least it wouldn't have had such a drastic decline in viewership during its second weekend. So I'm thinking there's something else at play here, which is why a lot of people aren't coming out to see this in theaters. And you would think this is one of those movies that people would actually show up to see because it's a huge visual movie. The last one, Fury Road, was a visual marvel. So a lot of people like watching that in theaters. I myself saw it a couple times in theaters, but it seems like people just aren't interested in watching this one in theaters anymore. And I think a lot of it just has to do with the fact that theater-going audiences have pretty much been conditioned to not watch movies in theaters because a lot of studios just have quick turnarounds when it comes to something that's released theatrically and then something that's released digitally. So I think a lot of people are looking at the ticket prices at the theater these days and are just thinking like, I'd rather just wait a little bit and watch it at home because it'd be a lot cheaper and I can do it in the comfort of my own home, especially since big screen TVs and decent sound systems are pretty readily available for most movie-going audiences. Furiosa Mad Max Saga may have had its online streaming release date revealed mere weeks after it debuted in theaters. According to a listing posted by DVD's release dates, Furiosa is seemingly coming to digital on Tuesday, June 25th. I'm not saying most audiences are aware of this release date, but I do think studios have kind of conditioned movie-going audiences now to pretty much expect a short turnaround from the time a movie is released theatrically until the time it comes out digitally. So the only people who are actually going to watch a movie in theaters are basically the fans of it, or people who are 100% certain they want to watch this movie. So they're like, yeah, I'll watch it the opening weekend because that's something I want to see. And then you see, like with this movie, stiff drop-offs during the following weekends. In the past, if you wanted to watch a movie, or if you were not 100% sold on it, but you were kind of curious about a movie, you either had to watch it in theaters or you had to wait around 8 months or so until it came out on home video. And those people would wait for a good word of mouth. So people would watch it the opening weekend, say it was a good movie after all, and then be like, okay, I guess I will give it a shot. And then you would see movies have a little bit more legs underneath them. But now they're not really given that benefit, because if you get the good word of mouth, like with this movie, people were like, well, okay, it sounds like an interesting movie. I guess I'll just wait for it to come out on streaming before I watched it, because it's not that much longer that you have to wait. Versus if they push back the digital release date of the movie like another like 5-6 months or something like that, then people are like, well, I could wait 6 months to watch this movie digitally, or people are saying it's good now, so maybe I will check it out right now. Because by having this short turnaround from the time it's released theatrically until the time it's released digitally, you're basically siphoning your own business. And I think studios are doing this deliberately because they would love nothing more than to cut out the theaters, because theaters take a cut of the box office. It costs money to distribute the movie to theaters. Even if it's released digitally, you still have to ship hard drives around the country. So I think a lot of studios are like, we just want to cut out theaters entirely, just sell all of our movies digitally, especially if you're a company like Disney that you have your own streaming platform. Just produce your own movies, release it all on your own streaming platform, and then don't have to worry about all the other stuff with that. The problem with studios, though, is they understand that they're not able to make enough money doing that by itself. Otherwise, they would be doing that. So they're trying to do some theatrical releases in order to try to get a bit chunk of change kind of at the first go of it, and then they can get the rest of the money on their own digital platform. But if they continue doing this, because theaters are suffering as a result of people not going out to watch movies in theaters, so eventually theaters will start shutting down. And then what are the studios going to do? Because like I've already told you, they don't have enough money on just their digital releases to actually supplement the cost of the making of the movie. So by shutting down theaters, well, then they're just kind of shooting themselves in the foot. And this is something that I think needs to be addressed at some point. It's something that they could fix right now by just making it clear a movie is not going to have a digital or streaming release until like at least like 5 or 6 months after its theatrical release. Otherwise, we're going to continue on this trajectory where people just forsake theaters entirely until theaters go under, and then studios are ultimately going to suffer. And the only way they can continue moving forward is if they just eat their losses or just make significantly cheaper movies. But let me know what you think about all this in the comment section below. What can they do to actually get people to come out to watch movies in theaters? And I know it's an easy thing to say, just make better movies. Just other than that, like, yes, make better movies. But besides make better movies, what else could they do to try to get audiences back to theaters? And if you haven't already, make sure you click that subscribe button if you want to stay up to date with the latest entertainment news. And if you can, click that like button and share the video because it really helps out with the channel. Thank you.